Willow is single. Willow is focused, and Brooklyn should be very worried. Let us start with Willow, because the moment this divorce from Drew became official is the moment that a certain set of calculations in Willow's world shifted entirely. And Michael, who knows Willow better than almost anyone outside of her own family, heard the alarm bells going off before anyone else had even processed what the divorce meant. Here is what Michael understands about Willow that some of the people around her have not yet fully absorbed. Willow is someone who needs to have a man at the center of her life. Not in a weak or dependent way, Willow is neither of those things. But in the sense that her emotional architecture has always organized itself around a primary romantic relationship. When that relationship is absent or unstable, she fills the vacuum. Quickly, deliberately, with a focus that she brings to everything she decides to pursue. And the man Willow has always come back to in her heart, regardless of what the official arrangements of her life looked like at any given moment, is Chase. They were married. That history does not simply dissolve because circumstances changed and other people entered the picture. Willow knows what she had with Chase. She knows what it felt like. And she has spent considerable time since then in relationships that, whatever their other qualities, did not feel like that. Drew certainly never felt like that. Michael, for all of his genuine goodness, became something different over time. But Chase is the one that Willow measures everything else against, even if she has never said that out loud in quite those terms. Michael went to Tracy with his concern. Not because Tracy is the natural confidant for this kind of thing, but because Tracy is someone who has eyes on the situation and who understands the court-domain world well enough to grasp why this matters. Tracy, for her part, felt slightly better than she might have otherwise, because Chase has been demonstrating lately that he is genuinely committed to Brook, Lynn, and Phoebe. He chose correctly when Willow was standing in front of him asking him to choose. That is meaningful. That counts for something. But Michael's worry is not about Chase's intentions in a vacuum. It is about Chase's specific vulnerability in the presence of a woman in distress. Chase has a pattern. He cannot resist a damsel who needs him. It is one of the most consistent and most exploitable things about him, and Willow knows it better than anyone because she has benefited from it before. When Willow needs protecting, when Willow appears vulnerable, when Willow looks at Chase with those eyes that say she has nowhere else to turn, Chase's protective instincts activate in ways that his commitment to Brook, Lynn has to consciously override every single time. And Willow being single means she no longer has to manage the optics of pursuing Chase, while technically attached to someone else. She was careful about that before, or at least as careful as Willow gets about appearances. Now that consideration is gone. The divorce gives her a clean face to present to the world. She can frame whatever comes next as two people who have history and genuine connection finding their way back to each other, rather than as what it actually would be, a calculated campaign by a woman who wants what she wants and has very few compunctions about how she gets it. Drew's recovery has added another dimension to this that Willow is already thinking about. Because Drew is not going to make her life peaceful. Whatever agreement they have reached about silence does not mean Drew has stopped looking for ways to make her existence difficult. If Drew makes moves against Willow, legal moves, custody moves, social moves, Willow is going to look like she is under attack. And a Willow who is under attack is a Willow who needs protection. And Chase is the person she turns to when she needs protection, whether or not that is appropriate, whether or not Brooklyn is standing right there watching it happen. There is also the custody situation with Michael developing in parallel. If that becomes a formal legal battle, and all the signs point toward exactly that, Willow is going to be in a position where she is fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously. And people fighting on multiple fronts tend to look for allies, tend to lean on people who feel safe, tend to blur the lines between emotional support and something that crosses into territory it should not cross. Brooklyn knows all of this. Brooklyn has known it since before Willow and Drew separated, which is why her vow to Michael was so cold and so absolute and so completely unambiguous. She is not waiting to see what happens. She is already preparing for it, already drawing the line, already making clear to anyone who will listen that she will not accept losing Chase to Willow without a war. And Brooklyn at war is a formidable and somewhat frightening thing. Because Brooklyn's weapons of choice tend to be exactly the ones that could blow back on her just as badly as they damage their intended target. Chase does not yet know everything. He knows that Lynn framed Willow. That was the confession that changed the dynamic between them, the honesty that rebuilt the trust. But there is a layer beneath that confession that has not yet been spoken. Lynn was the driver who left the scene of Jordan's crash. That fact, sitting quietly underneath the relationship that has been painstakingly repaired, is a secret that could unravel everything if it surfaces at the wrong moment. Which in Port Charles it always does. Willow is circling. Lynn is watching. And Chase, caught between the two women who have defined the most complicated years of his life, is about to find out whether the version of himself he has been working to become is solid enough to hold under real pressure. Britt is in Anna's crosshairs and nobody around her sees it coming. Now let us talk about Britt, because this storyline is developing into something genuinely chilling, and the people who care about Britt need to start paying much closer attention than they currently are. Here is where things stand with Anna. She came back from France presenting a recovery that was not real. The hallucinations of Peter did not stop when she came home. They intensified because Peter's focus has an object now, and that object is Britt. Every time Anna tries to settle back into her professional life, every time she sits across from someone she respects and tries to have a conversation that moves forward rather than backward, Peter surfaces and redirects her attention toward the target he has been building a case for. And the case Peter is making, from his position inside Anna's fractured mind, is that Britt deserves to suffer. Not just to face consequences, not just to be held accountable for the choices she made around Cassius, but to genuinely suffer in a way that mirrors what Anna went through. Peter's specific argument is that Britt should experience captivity, should have to endure the particular terror and isolation and psychological damage of being held somewhere against her will, the way Anna was held, before whatever final chapter he is pushing Anna toward. That escalation from consequence to captivity is the thing that should terrify anyone paying attention, because it means the hallucination is no longer pushing Anna toward confrontation or accusation or even arrest. It is pushing her towards something active, something physical, something that puts Britt's actual safety directly in jeopardy in a way that institutional power or professional friction cannot. And Britt has no idea. Britt is navigating her return to the hospital with all the difficulty that represents. Her relationships with her colleagues are complicated. Her position is fragile. She is aware that she is on thin ice professionally, and she is trying in her particular Britt way to hold things together while also being impossible about it in all the ways that are deeply, authentically her. She is paying attention to the things directly in front of her: Lucas's frustration, Elizabeth's observations, the ongoing question of where things stand with Jason. She is not looking over her shoulder for a threat she has no reason to believe is coming from that direction. The moment Britt goes missing is the moment Port Charles starts to wake up to what has been building. Because Britt not showing up for work without explanation is not something that goes unnoticed. She is too much of a presence, too much of a personality, too much of a flashpoint to simply disappear without it registering immediately in the people around her. Liesl is going to be the one who sounds the alarm first and loudest. Because Liesl has already lost Nathan. She has been told she has lost Cassius too, in the manner that the WSB communicated that loss, which is to say in a way that Liesl has had to accept without the kind of closure that actually allows grief to settle. Britt is what she has left. And if Britt disappears, Liesl is not going to wait patiently for an explanation. She's going to mobilize every resource and every contact and every ounce of the fierce, overwhelming, completely non-optional love she has for her daughter, and she is going to find her. Rocco is going to be pulled into this too. Rocco, who has Britt woven into his life in ways that are specific and real. She saved him in a meaningful sense when she kept quiet about what she witnessed that night on the pier, and that kind of debt creates a connection that does not dissolve just because circumstances change. If Rocco hears that Britt is missing, he is going to want to help find her. And Jason, who is carrying his own complicated feelings about Britt right now, who is in the middle of processing what her omission about Cassius means for whatever they were building, that Jason is going to respond when Liesl or Rocco corners him and makes it real. Because whatever complicated feelings Jason has, they do not override his fundamental instinct to protect people who are in danger. And Britt in danger is something Jason cannot simply observe from a distance. The captivity scenario, if that is where Anna's hallucination-driven plan takes things, would actually create a particular kind of dramatic opportunity. Because Britt being held somewhere, isolated, miserable but alive, gives the people looking for her time. It gives Jason time. It gives the investigation time to develop. And it creates a situation where rescue is possible rather than a tragedy that arrives without warning. The irony that Anna, who has been one of Port Charles's most consistent forces for justice and protection, is the one putting someone in danger, is not lost on anyone. But that is what makes this storyline so powerful and so uncomfortable. This is not a villain doing villain things. This is a good person whose mind has been turned against her in a way that she cannot fully see, doing something terrible to someone who does not deserve it. The tragedy of it is real. And the urgency of helping Anna before she crosses a line she cannot come back from is the thing that makes every scene with her carry that edge of dread. Britt deserves to be found. Anna deserves to be helped. And the people of Port Charles need to start looking more carefully at what is happening right in front of them before it is too late for both of those things to be true. The web tightens, and every thread is connected. And now let us pull back and look at the full picture, because what is developing across Port Charles right now is one of those stretches where every storyline is feeding into every other one, and the connections between them are tighter than they might appear on the surface. Willow's divorce from Drew does not happen in isolation. It feeds directly into the custody situation with Michael, which feeds into whether Chase gets pulled back into Willow's orbit, which feeds into what Lynn decides to do with the information she is holding and the alliance she may or may not have considered with Drew. Every move any one of these characters makes sends ripples into 4 other stories simultaneously. The situation with Anna and Britt does not happen in isolation either. It connects to Jason's ongoing processing of what Britt kept from him. It connects to whatever Tristan's role in all of this turns out to be, because a heart surgeon who came back from Jakarta with Jason and has been circling the hospital ever since is not simply set dressing. His position in relation to Britt is going to matter when the crisis fully breaks. And it connects to Liesl, who is already operating at a heightened level of protectiveness and who has resources and contacts that most of Port Charles cannot match when she is motivated to use them. The trial for Curtis and Isaiah is happening at the same time as all of this. The verdict or the proceedings of that case are going to touch Portia, touch the baby, touch Jordan, touch the question of what happens to the people in Curtis's world, depending on which way the legal wind blows. And that outcome ripples into the question of what happens to his stake in Aurora, which connects to Michael and Drew's corporate situation, which connects to everything happening around deception with Lucy and Serena and Tracy. Sonny's announcement, whatever it turns out to be, is going to drop into the middle of all of this and create its own ripple. Because Sonny's announcements always do. He does not make them quietly, and they do not land without consequence. Elizabeth's discovery is going to matter. Whatever she learns, whether it is connected to Willow, to the trial, to something else entirely that nobody has anticipated yet, Elizabeth coming into possession of information she was not meant to have is always significant. Because Elizabeth is trustworthy and thoughtful, and she does not hold information carelessly. What she does with what she learns is going to matter for at least one other person in this town in ways that will become clear very soon. And underneath all of it, Brennan is sitting with his decision about Jens. The most consequential bad idea in a season full of bad ideas. The deal that solves nothing and creates everything. The gamble that a desperate man makes when he cannot see any other option and does not fully understand that the option he is choosing is worse than the problem he is trying to solve.
Port Charles is a web right now.
A tightly constructed, perfectly tensioned web where every thread connects to every other one, and pulling on any single strand moves the entire structure. The writers have built this summer to arrive at exactly this kind of convergence, where every character's choices have consequences that extend into every other character's story, where nobody exists in isolation and nothing happens in a vacuum. That is the general hospital that makes you clear your afternoon schedule and remind everyone around you not to interrupt your stories. That is the show that has kept women like us watching for decades, returning to it the way you return to something that understands you and knows exactly what you need.